Welcome to the video number 18, the last of the whole PubMed series. In this one, we are going to show you a step-by-step guide of how to use the advanced search page for a slightly more complex search. Let's get on. First, we have to plan our search. Ideally, we start our planning in a Word document as put down below, which is entering the full question on which we want to search, identify the main concepts, and for every concept, find the mesh terms and also put down all possible text words. Let's take an example. If our question is the treatment outcomes among people with coexisting TB and diabetes, what are the main concepts here? It's treatment outcomes, TB, and diabetes. We are not going to use the word people and coexisting in our search. So, what we will be putting down is the main concepts: tuberculosis, diabetes, treatment outcomes. Let's actually do this. So, I'm in a Word document. I've put this down, but I'm going to be showing you how I arrived at all this. First, tuberculosis. That was the concept. How did I find all this? Let's go. We are in PubMed. I'm going to the mesh database. So I'm in the mesh database. I'm typing tuberculosis. So tuberculosis is a mesh term. In these cases, I'm going to click and see also what the whole lot of lower terms are. Do I want my search to find articles about all these? In the cases of combining tuberculosis with diabetes in India, as subject people, we may know that there may not be too much literature. So it's a good idea to include all the lower terms as well. So I go back to my Word document and under mesh terms, I put tuberculosis. Now, how did I find some of these text words? I go back to that mesh page. In entry terms, I find tuberculosis, the plural, Koch's disease with inversions, with apostrophe, without apostrophe, everything. So let me go back to the Word document. I put tubercule with a star, which here means the variations of the spelling. So it could be tuberculosis as a singular, tuberculosis as plural, tuberculous. So all these variations are covered when I put a star after CUL. Then I put Koch's disease without apostrophe, Koch's disease with apostrophe, and the abbreviated form TB. Now, why do we need both these? Let me take you back to the first lesson in PubMed where we talked about PubMed having Medline journals and non-Medline journals. In a search like this, if we are trying to do a good review of literature, we ideally don't want to miss out on anything. So when I search tuberculosis as a mesh term, I'm searching for this in all the Medline journals. I'm going to miss out the non-Medline journals. In the non-Medline journals, I can only do a TIAB search, which is just the plain word search, tagged with TIAB, the words being in either title or abstract. So there, I've got to think of different ways in which authors might write, and hence the first word where it was TUBERCUL with a star, which was all the variations, Koch's disease with and without apostrophe, TB. We could, if we were looking for very old literature, one of the long ago words was consumption. So this is the way we could think of different words and put it down under the text words. So here we are listing all these and then we will go back to PubMed to actually feed in all these and create a strategy in the advanced page. Next, I'm coming to diabetes. I again go here. I search the mesh database for diabetes. I find diabetes mellitus. I click, I scroll down. Here there are no entry terms, but a bunch of C also terms, related terms. We'll come back to that. And again, there's a whole bunch of lower terms. So first, in the Word document, I put in diabetes mellitus mesh. Text word, when I put diabetes, it automatically includes diabetes mellitus if an author has written that. If an author has written the single word diabetes, that also comes. The second word I put was diabetic with a star. Now this will search the word diabetic and the word diabetics both. The next I put glucose intolerant with again that. So it could be glucose intolerance or glucose intolerant patients. That kind of phrase could also be searched. There's dysglycemia, hyperglycemia, and the short form DM. I've thought of so many variations that authors may use for this concept in the non Medline journals. Now, some of these terms, like hyperglycemia, also happens to be a separate mesh term. So we'd have to actually find that and put it down here. Let me go back to mesh. So this is also a mesh term. I can select this, copy it, I go back to Word and I put it down here. Okay. So actually, this exercise has to be done where we think of these words, check the mesh database, see this. Another practice that I do is search PubMed for, say, hyperglycemia mesh, and I see in the abstracts what kind of words authors have written. I might select some text words which may appear in the non Medline journals. So this way, we could really build up our terms. Let's go to the third one, which is treatment outcome. I found treatment outcome was a mesh term. In the text word, I just put outcome because it could be written as outcome of certain treatments. Treatment outcome, if I put as a full phrase, it will search only as a phrase. So outcome with star is outcome as well as outcomes. And in the entry terms for treatment outcome, I found different terms like clinical effectiveness. So I just chose effectiveness. Clinical efficacy was there. I chose efficacy. I added cure, failure, death, default, loss to follow up. All these are terms typically used in tuberculosis literature for treatment outcomes. Now, let me take one sample, loss to follow up. Let me search it in the mesh database. So I somehow remember it was there. So let me just try follow up there. There is lost to follow up is a mesh term. So I choose that, or rather, let me click it and choose it. It's easier so that there's no hyperlink. So I choose lost to follow up and I put that as a mesh term. Okay. Death. Let me see if death is a mesh term. Yes, death is a mesh term. I go back to Word and I put death as a mesh term. So this way, each of these things we could try and build up as many possible mesh terms, as many possible text words. This is the kind of work that has to be done when one wants to do a very good literature review or maybe even a systematic review or a guideline. Having identified terms, as I said, we probably need to make sure we have not missed any term, but let's just take this much as a sample and let's see what we are going to do in PubMed for this. So I'm on the PubMed homepage. I go to advanced. let's see how I'm going to use all these terms. I'm going to do it in such a way that when we download our search history, it will look very easy for anyone to replicate it later as well. Okay. So let me go to the Word document. I go to the first concept, which is tuberculosis. So I take tuberculosis, I put it here, and I can either choose mesh here or I could type mesh the way I do it in regular searching. And I say add to history. So it's added tuberculosis mesh as the first term. Now I take each of these words. These I'm feeding for the non-Medline journals. I'm going to be doing TIAB searches here. Add to history. Koch's disease, TIAB, add to history. Okay. Koch's disease with apostrophe, TIAB, add to history, and TB. Just type this TB, TIAB, add to history. Okay. So if I scroll down, I've got tuberculosis mesh and a bunch of TIAB terms. I'm going to combine all these with OR so that I have either tuberculosis mesh or the different options as TIAB. The whole lot, when they are combined with OR, it's going to be searching the Medline as well as non-Medline journals. Why are we searching the TIAB in the Medline journals? Because the latest may not have got indexed with mesh terms, and in the old ones, sometimes there might be indexing errors. So, for both these reasons, when we are doing a search for a systematic review or a thorough review of literature, our objective is to make sure that we do our best not to leave out any literature. So, how do I combine these terms? I just type #1 or #2 or #3 or #4 or #5. So #1 means tuberculosis mesh, #2 means this, and so on. I'm saying add to history. So for the concept of tuberculosis, we have so many items. Now I'm going to repeat this process for diabetes. So first, I'm choosing diabetes mellitus. I have to search it as mesh. I go back there. I'm pasting it, putting mesh. Add to history. Second term was hyperglycemia. Mesh. Add to history. Okay, I go back to check the text words. TIAB. Add to history. Diabetic with a star. TIAB. Add to history. So actually glucose intolerance is also a mesh term. I should have used that also in the mesh. But since this is just a demo, we'll just go ahead. Okay. Okay. So we have several terms for diabetes. I'm stopping with this. I'm not adding the other two just for interest of time. This time I have to do or from 7 to 12. So I'll be saying #7 or #8 or #9 or #10 or #11 or #12. I could do the same thing by clicking this and saying add, but I'm faster at typing, so I'm doing it this way. I click add to history. So if I take a minute to explain, this one, number 6, was a combination of all possible words for tuberculosis. Number 13 is all possible words for diabetes. And the last one we'll do is for treatment outcome. So, treatment outcome, mesh, lost to follow up, mesh, add to history, okay, death, add to history. So let's choose some 2, 3 here. IAB, so this way, let's assume I've added all the TIAB terms. So it's an OR of all these from 14 to 18. #14 or #15 or #16. So ideally it would have been still more numbers, but since I'm just demonstrating, I'm stopping here. I'm saying add to history. So number 19 was all possible options for treatment outcomes. Now we are going to combine the concepts together. I'll go back to the Word document to explain it. We want to do a search of tuberculosis and diabetes and treatment outcomes. What do we mean by that? Every result we get should have something about tuberculosis, something about diabetes, something about treatment outcomes. When it comes together, the probability of papers discussing coexistence of both these diseases is much, and their treatment outcomes is very, very high. So how are we going to combine it there? We go back to PubMed to see it. Number 6 is everything about tuberculosis. So I put #6. Then the diabetes, everything was number 13 and treatment outcome 19. So #6 and #13 and #19. Let's once again verify to be safe. 6 was about tuberculosis, 13 was about diabetes, 19 about treatment outcome. I click add to history. We've got 575 results. We'd actually get more if you've used all the terms. We could click this and see the results here. There is a great chance that many could be irrelevant because we've done a lot of word searches. That is, TIAB is the presence of the words in the title and abstract. But what we are doing here is when we want to do a systematic review or a thorough review of literature, it's very important to make sure we are not missing anything, and hence this kind of a option. So now you can see when you see this, it's anybody who's reasonably trained in PubMed can easily make out that number 6 represents everything about tuberculosis, number 13 about diabetes, and number 19 about treatment outcome. And finally, 20 is about combining all three together. Now, if I click download history, The file gets downloaded as a CSV or comma separated values file. If I open it, so the whole query is neatly available as an Excel file. And this can be saved as an Excel as a record of what we have searched. Ideally, when you're doing a systematic review, you're really supposed to put in this whole thing in an appendix when you're submitting the systematic review for publication. So it's very neatly available in here. I'm just going back to PubMed. So this was download history. Once we have finished, we can clear the history. If we don't clear it, it stays in the memory here for about 8 hours and then gets automatically deleted. If we wish to save this entire work, we click 575 and then click create alert and save the strategy. But there you will not get this neat strategy that we saw in advanced. It will just come as a complex search strategy. Let me just show it to you. But you can do a create alert and ask for email updates. Sorry, I clicked an extra button. It just go back. Oh yeah, here we needed to sign in. So let me just sign in to show you. So it takes the entire strategy built in like this. You won't get it in the Excel format. This is how it will be. But here we could actually create the topic as coexistence of TB, DM and their outcomes. So this way, if I save it in my NCBI, I'll be able to trace it later. I could ask for email updates so that I'm tracking this all the time. So with that, I go back to the presentation. We'll do a recap in the Word document. Put down your topic, choose the relevant concepts. In this case, we chose 3: diabetes, tuberculosis, and treatment outcomes. For each concept, we found mesh terms and text words. Now, one tip is we use a different browser first. Nothing wrong in using the same, but if we want to document our search strategy, it's a good idea to use one browser to find all the mesh terms and text words, document them all in the Word document. Later, while going to the advanced search to do the step by step, use a different browser so that it starts with serial number 1 and goes on. And when you download, you get a very clean Excel. So, we are noting down all the terms in the Word document so that it also helps us to make sure we have done the right thing. And we use the advanced search builder in the regular browser. So this is the way one ideally searches for a review of literature or systematic review when you have to identify lots of studies and make sure you're not missing anything. Takes practice. Watch this video, try and do it yourself again and again. Start with simple topics. Once you get the hang of it, longer topics will not sound so complex. Thank you. Good luck.